Hi everyone, welcome back to part two on deception technologies with Gadi Evran, and today we're going to have a lot more excitement on what works, what doesn't work in deception space. Yes, and I totally agree with what you said. So one thing doesn't solve all the problems, and even if you have excellent EDR in your environment, and EDR has improved greatly since old days of 90s, and when they started just doing everything based on signatures. But still, what you pointed out too, and I believe in the same, that once EDR is bypassed, you have phishing attack. Somebody give up the credentials, or somebody just went out on the site that not necessarily you don't really need to install malware just to get in the system. So all you have to do is just find the credits and some way to get a hook or foothold of the company. So without installing malware, and that's difficult task for any EDR to detect the compromise that already happened and somebody is operating someone else's credentials and like you said moving laterally, it's a pretty difficult problem. And then we have a lot of other technologies. You can segment your network up to kazoo or day and night. You're still not going to solve the problem because at the end of the day, even if you segment the network, you provide credentials to people to access different segments of your network regardless. So if my credentials are compromised and I have access to all the segments, it doesn't really matter anymore. Whether I'm segmented network or not, I will be, our threat actor will be able to move laterally between different segments using my credentials and access information that I was accessing and successfully exfiltrate. So like in your view, and when you put these things together, and you talk about briefly, it's like, can you just break down a little bit, let's say, in case of compromise, when somebody stole my credentials, what deception technology would enhance to prevent somebody using my credentials and getting to the places that they shouldn't be getting? How would they look like?
So assume for a second that somebody comes in to steal your credentials and they run, let's just go with Mimikatz, dump credentials from memory, steal your keys, whatever it is. They now don't know if what they have is real. And if they use even one credential that is not, and it all looks real, I'll stop for a second with my undiagnosed ADHD and say it's more complex than that. Attackers work usually on the API level, while defenders work while users work on the GUI level. So, for example, if I added a network share, it would pop up for the user on the side, in the Explorer if it's Windows. I haven't used Windows in years, so I'm thinking that's how it works. And what I can do is go to NetUse cache and leave the memory of something was there before when you look through the history. And there are a lot of issues like that. You're not always perfect with how you can do this. But assuming for a second it all works that way, you're now downloading all these keys and you're following through and you don't know what's real and what's not. So you might need to wait for months, giving the organization more chances to detect you. You might just get caught because you used the wrong credential. You can't just enumerate through all of them. And the minute you move, you risk yourself again and again and again throughout the entire process. So yes, it absolutely works. If we're looking at detection use cases and we're looking at enterprises, there are other use cases that I mentioned earlier that are pretty cool. Just to say, it doesn't have to be a credential. You can always use something like something past the hash attacks with so the computers answer each other and they think they've actually stolen your credentials, but no, it's deception. It's pretty cool stuff. And with the stories, you can actually build controls on the fly. You don't have a control for a critical database. You create a database that looks like it and you lead people there. You add something else to that computer when they try to move around. One cute idea that I really like that we implemented was to add a wallet, a
Mm.
blockchain wallet, to computers. So I'll ask you a question. If you could know that your home computer was compromised, what would that be worth to you in money?
A lot.
A lot. I'll say that I personally don't care, right? So I wouldn't put any money on it. But most attackers, if it's the CEO of your company, the answer could be $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, $1,000,000 one time just to know you're compromised, and it shifts around, and that's fine. But if you leave a wallet with even just 10 cents on it, most attackers around the world, I'm not talking about NSA, FSB right now, Most attackers around the world that are slightly less professional than that will take that money. And the minute that change has been made, you know you've been compromised. There's a lot of stuff you can do that's fascinating.
So it's kind of the same concept when I was just trying to think because again, attackers are going for credentials and for data, and then they try to figure it out if it's worth deploying ransomware or something else on company network, or simply just without network and leave, and then hold company for ransom just because they already had the data stolen. So, like when they go for the data, how easy is to create this illusion that somebody is getting to the vault or somebody is getting into some valuable piece of information that they who really wanted to steal but really don't know which one they're going to steal. Because right
Depends.
now it's like you have only one data element, right? You don't let the database, you go for the server and here's the data. So with deception, I assume you can create illusion that, hey, look, there's 10 different
I,
things
I,
that you
I
can
want to
go
be
for.
careful here. You can always do things as simple as going to the Active Directory and adding a really interesting, cool sounding name for a computer. It doesn't have to be Crown Jewels as the name of the computer. It can also be something like admin old or Active Directory old or whatever, domain old. Attackers would look for that sort of thing, right? So for me, it doesn't have to be that. But if your goal is detection, you don't need to create much of an illusion. You don't need to spend a lot of time trying to create something realistic. All you care about is the detection element.
Right.
Intelligence is different. So all you need them is to follow that breadcrumb. For example, use it somewhere else and it would set up your SIM so it alerts you. Or follow it through to a decoy machine and log in. Use their malware. That's all you really need. I don't want to spend the time to fool them beyond that.
Okay, so that makes sense. So you just want to focus at the beginning of the attack. So in
It's mostly
case,
the same for the organization, how they want to use deception. But the easier it is to deploy, the easier it is to build these stories. Some people, for example, sold deception by saying, we'll make your network look 5 times, 20 times bigger than it actually is by spreading around credentials. For me,
hmm,
I work so hard to fool ourselves that we can actually do some network hygiene and we want to spread all these credentials around, and more than it makes you fingerprintable. If you have 200 credentials, 5 credentials, whatever, on every machine in the network, yes, it works to slow down lateral movement, but they can also fingerprint these and know you're there. Now, do I want them to know I'm there, or do I want them to not know I'm there? Different strategies around deception. But that kind of strategy with just spray and pray, I never appreciated.
got it, got it. Yeah, it's yeah. I wish it had a lot more traction because there are a lot of I would say companies could have used use cases and bring deceptions. But again, to your point earlier, the market wasn't really ready, and
The market has voted; it doesn't want it.
well, you never know. It may come back to it because I don't see any viable products right now that well, a lot of companies talking about. But I think the big push right now into the direction of zero trust. But
Absolutely.
zero trust creates its own problems, and I don't know. I was just thinking about this, like, well, if you push it to zero trust, who's gonna trust today? And you still have to create some way, or even if market doesn't want deception technologies, would they still have a play in zero trust? Or it's absolutely out of question that zero trust and deception they don't really mix together, and they're not really best friends. What is your
I can
take?
see what you're saying. I'm not sure I 100% agree, but it's beside the point right now. Zero trust is a good example of something everybody wants, is willing to pay for, and yet most people around the world who have not spent a lot of time and money on it have failed miserably. I talk to 30 CISOs a week, and every single one of them has tried zero trust and still wants to try it, and yet failed in the implementation. It was much harder to do. It can even cause situations when it's easier to attack you because the user is already authenticated. It's just identity by itself is just so completely hard to do. Nobody has solved it yet. I don't even want to go into it. It's a huge topic that every CISO in the world will pay a lot of money for, and yet not a lot of people have actually managed to do something that pushes the world forward on that.
Well, it definitely reminds me a lot. I'm pretty sure you remember the days of threat intelligence when you go to RSA floor and almost every company had something attached to their name when they was saying something related to threat intelligence. We do this, we do that, and it was like entire RSA floor was filled with threat intelligence companies coming out of shadows and trying to deliver product, and some of them succeeded, some of them weren't. So, in my way of looking at things right now, a lot of it associated with zero trust. So there are a lot of conversation, there are a lot of buzz, there are a lot of sort of hype around it, and people try to buy, people try to understand better. But I guess it's a conversation for another day. But I was looking more of like from your perspective, if you say if somebody wants to build zero trust, would they really benefit from anything? Even market doesn't want it, like deception or some other cool thing
I
that you may
absolutely,
have in your mind.
I absolutely think so. Because when it comes down to it, the minute a computer or a user, depending on what you're trying to achieve, is authenticated, it can do a lot. And where the attacker chooses to go is interesting. So leaving some trails behind for them to follow it, creating a path, I think is very, very useful. But also, consider, for example, getting visibility or creating a data lake. All these things people say they want to do, just like zero trust, and usually fail in. Deception is cheap. Deception is easy. You get a lot out of it. Why not do it? But again, I sound bitter, but I understand why the market did not want it. And I'm okay with that. Maybe one day it will come back. But the reason I'm showing so much excitement about it, but also trying at the same time to be honest about the market, is because you asked me to talk about this, and I can't talk about one without the other.
Yeah, I got it. So from I guess we kind of coming close to our end of today's show. So I think from your perspective, and when you talked about all those deception technologies and other things, I know market doesn't really want it, but in a way, I don't see how we can continue because at the end of the day, honeypots, I don't think they're extremely useful or successful. It's not that hard. It's not that easy to build them, and it's hard to maintain them. And I know that technology companies, the ones that are in business of catching bad guys, I think they've been successful with deploying them worldwide and attracting threat actors and trying to understand their techniques. But what I've seen for the most part, all those TTX or tactics techniques, I mean, whatever procedures that threat actors or bad guys are deploying against good companies, they mostly learned through experiences. So if somebody gets attacked, and then pretty much everything is going to get debriefed and analysis is being performed, what has happened and how it happened, and then all those techniques get incorporated into the tool. So it's still a little bit, I would say, seconds or minutes behind the market, and I don't know exact timing for how long it takes when companies being attacked understand all those threat and techniques that were unleashed against the company, and then turn them into IOCs and disseminate on the companies so they can protect themselves. And even if you look at IOCs, majority of them are IP based. I haven't really seen a
I would
whole lot
even
of
I would even double down on that. Most IOCs aren't IOCs. They're not indicators of compromise. They're indicators. What
right.
context comes with them? Is it just somebody else's honeypot information I'm getting? So I do. I'm a believer in threat intelligence. I've been there when it got started. Man, I'm old. But threat intelligence is more than just feeds, and most people try to do threat intelligence, but don't necessarily know how. But what I'm happy about with threat intelligence is that it broke through into the industry, and people are talking about intelligence. They're trying to get better. We're building it up. So I actually like that a lot. Even if most of what we do is
Right.
still just copying each other and not doing too well, it has pushed our industry forward. Threat intelligence is fascinating, and I'm very happy to see that we're doing it.
Gadi, I have a last sort of foreign question for you, or forward thought, if you will. So, if you look back at all the things that you've done for deception technologies, and I know you already said that market doesn't want it, but that doesn't mean market is not going to change its mind. It happens. They
No,
always do, and
want to rephrase that. There is deception technology in the market. People do buy deception, but it's never caught on fire. It's never found product market fit.
Right.
It never became must have.
So, like from your point of view, do you see there's a future in it, or it's completely going away? Because I do see that it's a useful technology. At some point, market and people will realize that there are a lot of better ways of doing the same thing that they've been doing to detect threat actors, especially just like we talked about zero trust. And I think it's going to be very useful in zero trust setting, even more useful than it's been before. So, what is your take and what is your future, or what would you like to leave the audience with to say, yes, if you're thinking of deception, we're not dead yet. We're still alive and we're trying to do better, but you never know what market is going to do.
Okay, I'll say that I believe deception is undeniable. Technologically, with proof, philosophically, it works. And it absolutely will happen in the future. If it's 2 years from now, 20 years from now, I don't know. But I would say that even if it's only just deploying a couple of honeypots on your network, so you have some visibility, you can catch your pen testers when they're running around. I think it's worthwhile to at least play with it and do something around it because it truly works, depending on, again, what you're aiming for, what your risk assessment is, how much each of these will give things will give to you. So I would definitely explore what technology exists out there right now. I'm not that in the loop on what companies still exist, but I would say some of them got bought and still have an offering out there. It's worthwhile to look at to see if it fits in your strategy, especially if you have things you have not managed to fix in a long, long time and you require some sort of mitigating control around it. Deception can play that role for you. So will it happen in the future? Absolutely, because it's undeniable. Again, telling the future is hard, right? You can't really do that too well. But that's my belief. As to right now, I would say at least playing with it a little bit. Some honeypots, maybe thanks with a rune. I think that's a good way to go. Um, yes, absolutely. My recommendation is yes, play with it, try it out. But it's up to the person. Again, it's not about the tool. It's about what strategy they have in place and what they actually need.
Got it. All right. Thank you, Gadi, for that. Certainly appreciate you coming on and spending time with us and sharing with the audience your journey and successes and failures of
Anything
symmetry
for
and
you.
deception
You
technology.
are, aside to being a friend, you're a sister. I appreciate your. I would always do whatever it is you want, and I appreciate you having me here. And I guess just thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Gadi, and I appreciate what you're doing for community and certainly teammate doing a great job. And I've seen what you've done before for information sharing and how actively you're participating in building various circles. So, and that's essentially the same thing that I'm trying to do with Cyber Talk with Nikolai. Share information, bring the audience together, give them ideas, and whatever they're gonna do it as you said it, maybe they will change the market. Who knows? After the
Yeah.
show, maybe something will catch on fire and we'll see all deception technologies being sold like hotcakes. So hopefully it will get turned around and we'll see better days. But like I said, then you confirmed the same thing. It's absolutely useful technology. It's a lot easier to deploy than any other that's been previously done with honeypots and everything else. So again, thank you, Gadi, for being
Thank you.
on, for coming on and sharing all your thoughts. And until next time, and for the audience, thank you for listening. And remember, we're stronger together. And until next time, thank you.
For more information, please go to our website at www.issquaredinc.com.